with enrichment, how it's commonly taught, especially in our industry, is it's often presented as this like menu of activities, a checklist, rather than a dynamic system, a 3D system, if you will, for meeting needs. And one of the problems with that, especially if you're being presented with it as like this checklist, is that leads to this like guilt spiral of I'm not doing enough enrichment instead of like a genuine assessment of, oh, even though this person over here says that this particular activity does meet their dog's needs, that's not true for my dog, so I don't have to do it and I don't have to feel guilty about it.
Welcome to Enrichment for the Real World, the podcast devoted to improving the quality of life of pets and their people through enrichment. We are your hosts, Allie Bender.
And I'm Emily Strong.
And we are here to challenge and expand your view of what enrichment is, what enrichment can be, and what enrichment can do for you and the animals in your lives. Let's get started. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Enrichment for the Real World. And I want to thank you for rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.
We have a rule at Pet Harmony. If we're not a little bit embarrassed by what we believed 3 years ago, we're probably not growing. We are updating the Pet Harmony Enrichment Framework, not because the old one was wrong, but because we've learned things from our clients, from colleagues, from our mentees, from each other that have made it better. And so it's not so much a changing it as much as it is a refinement of it. And today you're going to get a sneak peek into what that is. And one of the reasons that we're refining it is because frameworks aren't meant to be static. The best ones evolve as our understanding deepens, as we see how people actually use it and what it looks like when it's actually in use, not just a concept on paper. And so sharing the process of evolving our framework to show what that looks like and how it works and why it happens. That's just part of how we operate. That's how we do. That's us, Pet Harmony, doing things in public so people can see that we're not perfect and how you navigate being not perfect. That's way too long to be our actual tagline, but that was my spur of the moment tagline.
I feel like we could put that as how to operate as a lifelong learner.
There you go. That's a way better and more succinct tagline. Excellent. So by the end of this episode, you'll understand what's changed, why it matters, and why we think this version is going to change the way you think about enrichment for your animals and also maybe for yourself.
So let's start with what prompted the update. Like, what were the gaps, the limitations that we were seeing that said, like, maybe we should do a little bit of refinement. I can't believe I'm saying this. Our book came out 7 years ago. So we've been teaching the specific enrichment framework for 7 years now. We have been teaching this for a long time, for hundreds. Thousands is probably more accurate, but that feels weird to say, so I'm just going to say hundreds of people. And one of the things that we were seeing was that we were getting the same or very similar questions at the same parts of the framework. So, mini spoiler, you're going to see we added some steps in the middle of the framework. And that is because that's where we were seeing people have breakdowns. And we saw those breakdowns we got the same or similar questions at that time. We saw people like struggling to move past that step. And this was true in all of the different places that we were teaching this. And so it was like, okay, this is very clearly an us problem. Like, if everybody around you has the same issue with a thing you're teaching, that means you're teaching it in a way that's not helping. Like, you're the common denominator. So that was one of the things that we were seeing. And so really this is and as we were going through and Emily and I were, creating presentations and being like, people keep getting stuck here. Like, what do we do? And we're like, oh, we were lumping. So like, again, A little mini spoiler for what you'll see, but I do think it's important for us to point out like here's what we saw for the breakdown because a lot of times people, clients, professionals, people who don't even have pets, like when they're doing a thing and they're struggling with something and they're like, I know something's wrong, but I don't know how something's wrong. And so I think like giving, like verbalizing, here's how we knew something was wrong can be really helpful to emulate for other people so that they can also verbalize that for themselves and come up with solutions.
And I think another thing that is helpful to point out is that both you and I came from a background of enrichment. You were focused on enrichment in college. I was taught enrichment from Scott Eccles before I knew anything about behavior when I was working with parrots. And both of us kind of came into behavior work after we learned about enrichment. And so for both of us, and one of the reasons we like hardcore insta clicked at the sanctuary where we met is both of us were seeing behavior through the lens of enrichment and making decisions about our behavior change plans based on enrichment. And so we didn't have we weren't really using an enrichment framework per se, but we just had that internal database of what behavior change looks like through an enrichment lens. And then we learned about enrichment frameworks in zoos, aviaries, and aquaria. I mean, I was kind of aware of them before because again, I had learned from Scott Eccles, but I wasn't thinking about them as a teaching tool. I was thinking about them as something that happens in zoos, right? And when we started trying to teach other people how to do what we do, when we started the OG mentorship program back in the day, and when we were doing research for our book, it was like, oh, this spider framework can teach people, like if we just adapt the spider framework to make it more applicable to companion animals, we can actually use this to teach people how to think about behavior the way we think about behavior. And that was a learning curve for us because we didn't grow up in that framework. And so learning how to teach people how to do what we do by using a framework that we didn't create obviously has required some of our own learning and trial and eval and just like evolving, right? And so one of the things that we realized is that by using the spider framework, we were teaching it in a way that was far more linear than how our brains actually process this. And so that's another big component of this is learning how to teach teach it in a framework while still making it as flexible and adaptable as it is in real life when we're actually doing this work. So I think that's another thing that prompted the update is like, oh, just because we are teaching it linearly because you have to, like you can't teach multiple things at the same time, doesn't mean that we want to teach people how to think linearly. Like we have to teach it in a specific order, but we want people to learn how to mix and match that order in a way that makes sense in the moment, right? And I think that's a big important difference between a checklist and a framework is that checklists tell you what to do, so they are more linear. Whereas frameworks help you figure out what to do when the checklist isn't working, when it doesn't fit, or you're trying it and it's not getting you the results you want. A framework allows you to be more flexible. So, silly past us, framework shouldn't be linear. Like, of course not. That's like one of the key differences between a checklist and a framework is that it's not linear. It's a three-dimensional space that you can operate within, right? So we're learning, we're growing, we're adapting as learners do. Good for us.
And I think we see something kind of similar with enrichment, how it's commonly taught, especially in our industry, is it's often presented as this like menu of activities, a checklist, rather than a dynamic system, a 3D system, if you will, for meeting needs. And one of the problems with that, especially if you're being presented with it as like this checklist, is that leads to this like guilt spiral of I'm not doing enough enrichment instead of like a genuine assessment of, oh, even though this person over here says that this particular activity does meet their dog's needs, that's not true for my dog, so I don't have to do it and I don't have to feel guilty about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I love about getting to work with other behavior professionals in PetPro is we get to support people on that learning journey where they start with the list of activities and dividing their training plan into management, training, and enrichment. And it's so beautiful to watch over time as people sort of transition into fluency in thinking about behavior through an enrichment lens and not having to think about the individual steps of the enrichment framework, but they've just got it. It's the stage of learning is called unconscious competence. Like you don't have to think about it, you just can do it, right? And it is so fun watching our mentees go through that process. It gives me butterflies in my tummy.
My favorite part of it is I know when somebody is like, I mean, aside from like I've talked to them about their cases and I know their learning journey and all of that, but like the thing that really solidifies it for me is when they like very sheepishly are like, I don't follow the enrichment framework steps the way that you laid them out. And they're like it's like a confession, like I don't do it the way that you teach it. And I'm like, baller, neither do I.
That means that you have transitioned from conscious competence, where you are thinking about the steps as you do them, to unconscious competence, where you don't need the steps anymore because you can just do it, right? That's not a confession, it's a triumph. It is so cute. It's my favorite. I love watching people not realize they've reached fluency. It's so cute. Okay, so let's talk about some of the key differences. First of all, there were 8 steps and now there are 10 because we split 2 steps into smaller pieces.
Okay. So for those of you who don't have the original 8 steps of the Pet Harmony Enrichment Framework memorized, which is me, I am directly reading this from our workbook.
Also, probably everybody listening.
Probably everybody listening, and like if you do have it memorized, like maybe you should be in my seat instead. Like,
Literally, the only reason I have the new one memorized is because I do the enrichment implementation office hours every month. So I've got it now, but I did not have it for a long time because, again, Allie and I didn't learn this framework. So this is not, it's not, that memorizing all of the steps is not part of our fluency.
yes. Yeah, we're in the unconscious
No, we're in the conscious competence stage of the steps. We're in the unconscious competence stage of doing the enrichment work.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so the original 8 steps. 1, list desirable and undesirable behaviors, both current and future. 2, are needs being met. 3, are agency needs being met. 4, narrow down your options. 5, prioritize activities. 6, develop plan of action. 7, implement and document. 8, reassess, readdress, and do it again.
So now we have 10 steps in the new version. And the first change is actually in the first step. Because one of the things that we realized is that people didn't understand why they were listing out desirable and undesirable behaviors, or even what we meant by desirable and undesirable. So we split that step into 2 steps. And now the first step is identify your goals for this enrichment plan. What are you hoping will change about that animal's physical, behavioral, and or emotional health? What are the outcomes you are hoping to get from this plan? And start there. And then step 2 is now list the undesirable and desirable behaviors. And in this context, what that means is which behaviors are actually facilitating our goal? Which behaviors do we already have available to us that will help us get farther towards our goal, that will move us in the right direction? and which behaviors are currently acting as barriers to reaching the goal, are preventing us from getting where we want to go. And the reason that that is one of the first things that we have people do is because later, when you're coming up with your list of options for the enrichment plan, we want people to have as efficient of an enrichment plan as possible. And part of that efficiency is using what they already have available to them. So if the animal or the person involved is already doing something awesome, but we just need to tweak how they're doing it or change the context in which we're doing it to make it more impactful, that is so much less labor than giving them a new training plan that they have to learn a new suite of behaviors in order to reach the same goal. And a lot of undesirable behaviors are just species typical behaviors that aren't working for us. If we can change the context of those undesirable behaviors to make them desirable, then again, we have to do very little effort because we're not teaching the animals a new behavior necessarily. We're just giving them a context in which to do the behavior or behaviors in a way that works for us instead of working against us. So an example of that is if you have a dog who's counter surfing, the good part of that is foraging. The bad part of it is destroying your countertops and eating food that they shouldn't eat and all of that stuff, right? So if we can just change the context and be like, hey, instead of doing this on the counter, could you do it on the floor? We've got like instant, super easy part of the enrichment plan. We don't have to teach the dog or whatever animal we're working with a new skill. We just have to give them a new context for something that they already do well. And suddenly we are miles ahead in our framework. So splitting that step and helping people understand that the reason we're compiling those list of behaviors is because we have to know what our goals are, and we have to be able to assess if the behaviors that are currently happening can help us reach our goal, will make everything else in the enrichment framework easier. Do you have anything to add, or do you want me to move on?
You can move on, and then I can do a summary of like recap. Here are the 10 steps.
The other step that we realized we had to split was formerly step 4, which is narrow down your options. Now, the new step is first compile your list of options. We learned that a lot of people don't automatically start like Rolodexing in their head all the different ways that they can reach their goal. And Allie and I had a moment where we were like, silly us. Because of course people don't. If people are coming from a background of prescriptive training where they're like, if this behavior, then this protocol, they're not going to have a list. They're going to have one thing on that list. And we were like, right. Okay, let's help our learners become more flexible in like being able to assess all of their options so that they can make a descriptive decision instead of a prescriptive kind of formula, right? So the second new step that we added was compile your list of options. Given your goals, given the behaviors that you have available to you and the environment and the client capacity and all of that stuff, or caregiver capacity, because sometimes we're doing enrichment plans for ourselves or family members. They're not necessarily clients, right? But we can look at what are all the options available to us? What are all the different paths up the mountain that can help us to reach our goals? And then from there, you do the process of figuring out what can we recycle or upcycle instead of creating a new plan? What do we already have available to us? What is there one thing that is showing up on multiple lists where one activity or one training plan will tick multiple boxes on our list of goals? And if so, let's do that one thing instead of having a different training plan for each item on our list of goals, right? Why would we have our clients or the caregivers, the guardians, do 8 training plans when 1 or 2 training plans will achieve the same outcome? That, like, the only reason to do that is because the caregivers just really want to train and enjoy training. Otherwise, don't make the caregivers do more work than is necessary, right? So you can look at what you can upcycle, what's redundant, and then scratch everything else off the list. So you've got this tight, clean, efficient plan that is requires minimal labor for maximum effort and outcome. I mean, not maximum effort. Nope. Minimal labor for maximum outcome. There we go. I got there. So that was the other thing that we changed, and the other step that we added was actually helping people to utilize that step in a way that makes more sense and teaches people skills that they probably haven't learned elsewhere.
I also said yesterday, work harder, not smarter. So like, yeah. So yeah, like we're just
Our brains are just making us tell people to work harder than they need to.
yeah, yeah. It's just like the antithesis of our whole thing.
It is, but it's hilarious.
Yes. Okay, so to sum that all up, the new steps, the 10 steps of the that feels weird because we actually added one of the steps like several years ago, and then we added like another step like what, like a year ago, but
True, but we are formally releasing them. Yes.
publicly, yes, publicly announcing versus like if you went to this one conference presentation 2 years ago, you're like, there are 9 steps. And then, obviously, like in PetPro, you've been using all 10 steps for a while. Yeah. But yeah, publicly releasing. So the 10 steps are: one, list your goals. Why are you doing this? Two, list desirable and undesirable behaviors, both current and future. Three, are needs being met? Four, are agency needs being met? Five, come up with options to help you reach your goal. Six, narrow down your options. Seven, prioritize activities. Eight, develop plan of action. Nine, implement and document. It's not in the workbook, so so. 10, reassess, readdress, and do it again.
Yay. New enrichment framework.
Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like. That was a poor sentence.
It works. People know what you meant.
I know. I don't like it. Whatever. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So I'm going to do a not behavior issue example because like somewhere along the line, and this is like totally just like me being on a soapbox, and it's one of my pet peeves. Like somewhere along the line, we started hearing that people were like, oh, they only use this framework for behavior issues. Like if your dog doesn't have behavior issues, then you can't or shouldn't use this framework.
I had to do some box breathing after I saw that.
Right. And like both of us were like, what? What? When did we say no?
Literally never. We've literally never said that. Where did you get that from? Please stop spreading that. It's incorrect.
It's incorrect. We use examples of pets with behavior issues because that's our literal job. And those are the examples we have.
And also, there are so many examples in the book, in our books, both books. No, 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 that's true. The workbook was just.
The workbook was that one.
But in our other book, there are so many examples of animals who are behaviorally and emotionally healthy that we're just enriching their lives. I don't understand where that came from, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm clearly over it.
Clearly, we're both over it. So, yeah, because this is my podcast and I can be on a soapbox if I want to, I'm going to do a not behavior issue.
Do it. I'm proud of you. I support you.
Thank you. I mean, also because it's the easiest one because I'm going to use OSO and therefore it's easy for me to use. So, y'all who have listened to me on the podcast, you know that OSO is an Omian. And that means that we're getting a lot of age-related changes in him, and they're coming faster now as twilight years are setting in. That's what happens, is it happens faster. And that means that we have to modify his enrichment plan somewhat regularly to navigate, what's happening with him. Okay, so step one, goals. I have several goals that I want to reach with Oso's enrichment plan. One is quality of life, and that means several different things in this particular situation. Quality of life, in that I want him to have joy and be, as full of life as he can be at this stage. So, like, I want to see that he is a jerk. That is one of the things that tells me he's feeling good, is when he's a jerk.
Operationalize being a jerk for people who don't understand that for us, that's a term of endearment.
I just like general, like, why are you? Like, he's just like pushy and he's like, this is what I want. I'm doing it. And we're like, no, please don't. And he's like, I'm doing it.
Bull in a china shop.
You bull in a china shop, like, j invades your personal space, doesn't care that you're tired on the couch. He wants a thing and he's gonna get it. Like, all of this, getting into my compost bins and raised beds and generally wreaking his little havoc while living life. Like,
We love jerks here at Pet Harmony.
we love jerks in dogs, not humans.
Not human jerks.
Humans can get wrecked if they're jerks. Like,
We love dogs who are jerks.
dog surgery, because that means, like, for me, that means one, that is who he is. That has been who he is forever. He's just bull in a china shop, like has no semblance of personal space, and like he does what he wants, and we have taught him the skills to get things that he wants, and he's using his skills for good or evil. So, so that is truly one of the things that I look for looking at, does he have a zest for life? Part of that quality of life. He's a jerk. I also want to see that he gets excited about things that he normally gets excited about. Are we excited about going on our adventure walk? Are we excited about front outside time? Are we excited to play and train and all of that sort of stuff? And and that he can still rest, relax, self-regulate. Again, use the skills that we have spent a decade teaching him. So part of that quality of life is his emotional and behavioral health. The other part of that quality of life is his physical health. And now there is obviously a correlation. One of the things that we know for him is he loves moving and using his body. And that is a thing that promotes his emotional and behavioral health, and his physical health is going to get in the way of that sometimes. So, like, there is obviously an overlap with that. But for physical health, I'm looking at, is he still eating regularly? How's his poop? But most importantly, how mobile is he? Does it hurt to just live in his body at all times and to use his body to just navigate our house and his day-to-day life? The third part that we're always looking at is also the human quality of life here. And now for us, we are very fortunate that, like, I work from home and dogs are my profession. So so I have a lot of luxuries that I wouldn't necessarily expect the average person to have. But we're looking at quality of life in that, like, we now have to help our 90-pound dog navigate stairs every single time he goes outside, which does wear and tear on our bodies as well. And don't tell my occupational therapist this, but like, I have not found a good way to do it that doesn't cause strain on my back. I'm so sorry. OT. I just, the stairs are so narrow. I can't figure it out. Just in case you're out there, Beth. Like, I'm sorry. You taught me so much about body mechanics, and I'm not using them in this situation. So, yeah, so we do also have to pay attention to things like that. Like, I'm getting over a cold. So like, it was legitimately hard for me to let Oso out while Alex was out of the house at work this week. And so, yeah. So we're looking at those things for quality of life. The thing I would say that is most important goal-wise for his enrichment plan, y'all, I'm still on step one right now, by the way. Still on step one, because an ounce of prevention, what is that? An ounce of prevention is like worth a pound of cure. Yeah, that's not exactly the one that I wanted. I wanted the one from like one of the Roosevelts whatever. That's like planning means it's good.
The only one I know is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's the one? Awesome.
You heard it here, folks. Planning is good from FDR.
Amazing.
You know what? I'm sure FDR did say that at some point in time in his life, okay?
I think we don't really need to find the attribute for that one because it's a common enough adage at this point.
Yeah, so anywho, so I mentioned several goals in there. The one that is most important is the mobility because it impacts every other goal that we have. Like I said, he loves moving and using his body. If he can't use his body, that's going to decrease his mental and, or sorry, his emotional and behavioral health. The less he can use his body, the more strain it puts on our bodies to be able to take care of him, the more strain it puts on our day-to-day routines, life, setup, everything like that. So, mobility is our most important because it has the biggest impact on everything else. So, that was step one. That was my goal. Increase mobility in order to do all the other things or maintain mobility. Like we're increasing it. Yeah.
Maintain mobility so that he continues to be a jerk.
Yes, that's the goal. Mary Kay was over this morning, as you know him, and he tried to jump on her, and we were like, that's a poor decision, but yeah,
You're not making good life choices, but it's a warm, fuzzy choice.
it's a warm, fuzzy choice. And then she sat on the couch, and he like immediately leapt onto the couch and invaded her personal space and licked her ear. So he's feeling good. He's feeling good. Okay. So, second step, list desirable and undesirable behaviors. I already mentioned several of the desirable behaviors are that he's a jerk and he's annoying, and I operationalized that already. So that part's done. And really, that means that he's using skills like problem solving, like asking for things from us, which might be in an annoying way. He is asking for things from us. He's foraging in my compost bin. Again, the foraging is good. The compost bin is not. But yeah, so using all of those skills and we're seeing all of those typical OSO behaviors. Other desirable behaviors that we have is he still loves training. He loves his treats. And so that means we can do things like cavalettis, we can do stretches, we can do proprioception work, all of those things I'm listing in desirable. I'm also listing tug in desirable because that helps with the hind end strength and core strength. Yes.
Which is important for big dogs with failing bone or failing joints, I mean.
Yes. Yeah. Undesirable behaviors that I see. Sometimes we try to jump on the couch and the back leggies don't really get up there with the front leggies, and so we have to pick up the hind end and plop it on the couch. So that's an undesirable behavior that we see. Another undesirable behavior is I mentioned that Alex and I are now helping him down the stairs every single time. Every now and then he gets like a little too much pep in his step and he like is fully suited up in his harness. We are like propping open the screen door and he just like jumps down the stairs by himself. And it's like,
Like, nobody. No jumping.
this is a very poor life choice, okay?
Jumping bad.
Jumping bad. So so that is an undesirable behavior is him going down the stairs by himself of his own volition. The other kind of piece of that is he used to have a beautiful weight behavior. He does not have a beautiful weight behavior anymore. I feel like such like a typical pet parent because, I'm at the bottom of the stairs, I tell him wait, and then I'm opening the door and I see him going, and I'm like, wait, wait, wait.
All of your training knowledge just falls out one of your ears when it's your own dog.
Yes. Yeah. So that's an undesirable behavior. We do not have a lovely weight anymore.
Need to judge that.
Other undesirable behaviors that I see related to mobility, we get the like a little bit of foot dragging, and we can either hear that on the, I mean, our floors are covered in rugs, but if he steps off the rug, like, because sometimes he's like, why don't I lie here where there's not a rug and then I can't get up? And you're like, Okay. That's a choice. Okay. So like we can hear it sometimes if it's wet outside, we can see the drag in the wet. And then difficulty standing up from lying down, the like hard plop down from standing, and then just like general, I'm gonna say funky gait. And yeah, funky gait. So those are desirable and undesirable behaviors for current. For future, really, like I don't have any new desirable behaviors for the future that I'm looking for because realistically, at his age, where improvement is not super possible because of how bodies work at this point. And so maintaining is the best that we can hope for. We can hope for a little bit of improvement, of course, but like not to the point where I'm going to see new behaviors. He's not going to start running again. We're not going to do flirt pole again. Like there are things that are truly in our past. Our needs being met. For those of you who have our workbook, you know that we have a giant checklist in that workbook. I am not going to go through the entire thing with Oso, but what I can say is, for the most part, yes. Where we're seeing changes, and one of the reasons that we have to like continue to revise his enrichment plan as his body ages, is we see noticeable changes in some of the physical health categories. So that could be one of the things we've noticed of late is that he's bored, he wants to do things, and his body peters out before his brain does. And that has never been true for him before. So, and so that's one of those that of like we now have to be looking at mental exercise that does not involve movement. Whereas before, I would usually lump them together and feed two birds with one nut. So that is a need that has room for improvement. The others include nutrition. Emily, you know, he was a garbage disposal, would eat anything and everything, iron stomach. Eating was never a thing that we had to be concerned about. Eating is now harder. And whether that's like, and we are, you know, he's on Prilosec now, like all of the things, right? Like we've done a lot of diagnostics for this to rule out any severe physical issues for it. But, you know, like this past week he had hurt his foot and so extra pain, all of that. And so like eating is not a thing that he's wanted to really do consistently this week. And the hard thing with that is he doesn't eat and then he gets weak and then he gets in more pain because he can't use his body and then he doesn't eat because he's in pain and like it's just a vicious cycle. So like that's a thing that we have to do. The other thing, which y'all, I do this for a living and I've helped thousands of dogs and it still like didn't I still didn't think of this is we had a lot of very beautiful cooperative care and care with consent behaviors for his physical health stuff that he is no longer able to perform. And so I'm having to change, like his nail file board is something that is very hard for him to perform now. He used to just like do his own dew claws by himself. He's much less likely to do that now. You know, like he was an avid chewer. He's now lost several teeth and dentals. So like I didn't ever think of how am I going to care for my dog when he physically can't opt in to some of the care that I've provided for him in the past. So that is also a thing that fits into both number three, our needs being met, and number four, our agency needs being met. Because the less that he is able to like physically like do his own care, the more I have to worry about agency. So that's number three, our needs being met. Number four, our agency needs being met. I already mentioned the like I now have to go back to the drawing board with some of his physical care things. The other thing that I noticed too is with going outside. It used to be like he would go outside multiple times per day, all of that, and he doesn't do it now, and I don't necessarily know is it because he doesn't want to, which is a piece of this, absolutely. He just doesn't want to be out there as much. Is it because he's asking and I'm not offering? Because it requires the full suit up, the open the door, the help him down. Like it's a lot of work for versus, before it was open the door. Do you want to go out? Yes or no? And he could say yes or no. He doesn't have that anymore. If he's suited up, it's like,
We're going out. Yeah, he doesn't have a way to request it as much anymore, it sounds like.
yes, yeah, and doesn't have as much of a way to opt out because there are times where it's like it's it's been a long time, like you need to. He also is he has fewer options as far as like where he sleeps. He used to sleep in our bed. He is choosing, I mean, he can still, like, there's still the platform there. He still could if he wanted to. He is choosing not to. I imagine it's just too unsteady to walk on the bed. But that does mean that, like, snuggle time is, we don't have as many options for snuggle time anymore. And there is something else. Oh, and then just kind of like general exploration, moving around, all of that sort of stuff. He was able to get a lot of those, that like agency in being able to explore our yard. That is obviously physically harder for him. If we have to be helping him walk around the yard, that decreases some of that agency because, he might want us to be walking around with him for 30 minutes and we're like, nah, bro. So, options. Number five. Number five. Thank you. Number five is come up with options. So, Emily, I'm actually curious to hear your options.
Like what options I have in mind for your plan?
Yeah. I, I don't know if you like thought about it, but as I was talking.
I There are a few things that I would put on the list, but I don't know that they would end up being on your end list. But one thing I would try is, can we teach him to walk up a ramp? I mean, I know your living room layout, which is why I'm kind of hesitating. But this is kind of the point, is that you and I are so used to doing this in our head in real time that, like, by the time I've actually talked it all the way out, I'm like, I know why I would rule this out. Like, I know why I would cross this off my list, right?
Yeah, you come up with options and narrow them at the same time.
And narrow them down at the same time, right? But for the sake of this exercise, I will articulate. One thing I was thinking is a ramp to get on the sofa so that he's not trying to jump up and having his back legs. The reason I would rule that out is because a ramp would take up your whole ass living room. Because Allie's living room is long and narrow instead of being like a square. And so there's just not like, that would impede the walking space. But another thing that we could put on the list is teach him to request being lifted onto the couch instead of having him try to do it himself, so that you can help support him in getting up on the sofa. And also, I don't know about also, I mean, your couch isn't very high, so I think, and his front joints are okay. So like it might be okay for him to get down on his own. So it would just be teaching the get up, like requesting to get up. Same thing with the stairs, teaching him to request getting the stairs, zhuzhing the weight. We need that. But damn, what were we just talking about? Because I had an idea for that and now I've forgotten the thing that we were talking about.
We're not offering to let him out as much.
Yeah, that's one of them, but that's not the only one. But yeah, teaching him how to ask to go out now, or tell you like when he needs to go potty. But there was something else. What was the other? It was like one of the last things that you talked about.
He doesn't have a way to opt out as much as he did. Like if he's suited up, like he's definitely going outside. Like he doesn't have a way to opt out necessarily. If he's walking around the backyard, he physically can't like explore as much. Or if we're helping him, like then that decreases agency.
I don't remember what my original thought was. I took too long to get there and it just like wandered off. But another thing that would be on the list is, could you create an indoor version of his outdoor exploration by bringing some of your stuff from the backyard inside and hiding it around the house, so he has to find it and he can sniff it and explore it. So he's still getting the benefit of a gentler movement and the benefit of like the scent trailing without having to be out. I mean, your yard is massive, and part of the issue isn't just getting up and in and out, but like navigating that big yard. You can, if you bring some of that stuff from your yard into the house, he can get the same diversity of scent trails without having to travel over uneven ground, longer distances. So that's one thing that I would put on the list. Having another space where you and he can snug lower down on the ground. So he's got a little bed area in the corner of the living room. And what would it look like to make that space bigger so that you and him could fit on it? And that could be like your reading space where like you lay down and you read, and that gives him the opportunity to snug with you while still, because the thing about him snugging on the sofa is that there's not enough space for him to really stretch out, and that gets uncomfortable for achy joints. So having his bed in the living room big enough to fit both of you means that he could snug with you while fully stretching out, and you could be using that time to read or work on your laptop or something. I don't remember all of the things that you mentioned, but those are the thoughts that I have off the top of my head from what I remember you saying, because you had a lot. There's a lot on that you were discussing, and I've forgotten some of it. Is there anything that you mentioned that I didn't address in my list?
Not being able to participate in his care as easily.
That was it. That was it. That was the one I couldn't remember, because what I was thinking is, oh, okay. So this is an example of where I had already ruled everything out in my head in advance. And so I'll just skip to the end. The bed idea on the floor would not only help with the snugging, you might not need to do any training on the sofa if he has another place to snug with you, unless he just likes being on the sofa on his own, which I think he does. But the other thing about having that bigger bed is that you can teach him a lateral lay so that you can do his nails while he's like fully stretched out and laying down. And then like snug time could happen after that. So it's one activity that it kind of ticks multiple boxes in your plan, right? And I think there's other ways that we could do that down, like having one signal from him that means I need help in general. And then he can lead you to where he needs help. So you only have to have one training plan for him requesting help. And then you can use that for the sofa, the stairs, the backyard, whatever else. That would narrow down your labor so that you're not having to teach everything that I mentioned on my list separately, but you can still have the same outcome, right?
I love it. And you came up with some things that I hadn't come up with, and that's why I asked you because I knew that would happen. Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of bringing stuff from outside in so that he can still do his thing and scent trail and trail sense and all that.
You can bring him a cabbage from the garden or a melon. Wait, what is the thing that he eats all of? It's your cabbages?
Cabbages, melons, tomatoes,
Yeah, you can bring him one and hide it somewhere so that he still can wreck your veggies without wrecking your entire veggie bed.
yes. Hilarious. I love that. Yeah. Some other things that I have on my list of options, I think more car rides with the windows down so he can yeah, so he can be smelling the scents and all of that. And one of the, I guess, nice things about him not being super mobile is we can have the windows really far down and we no longer have to worry about him jumping out the windows because he can't jump out the windows. So that's a thing. For eating, we're exploring washing his bowl more frequently. Before, bruh was gross and he did not care about the state of his bowl. And now we think that he needs like a certain level of cleanliness that he has never requested before. So that is on the list of options. We're also trying different like ways of feeding. Like he didn't want to eat from his bowl yesterday. We've already elevated. We're already adding broth. Like we're already doing all of that sort of stuff, which is typical senior dog stuff. But yesterday he didn't want to eat from his bowl, and I was like, you like for real, you have to eat. Like it's 12:30 and you can't take some of your pain meds until you eat. So like for real, you have to. And so I like put it in one of our human ceramic bowls. And while he was on the couch and he just like ate off of out of his bowl while he was lying on the couch. And that was cool. So yeah, there's definitely like an aversion thing happening.
Yeah, I wonder if it's not just the cleanliness. I mean, it could just be that he has an aversive association to his bowl that he didn't have to your ceramic bowl. But I would also want to test, like, if you get a dog ceramic bowl, which one would he prefer? Because another thing to assess is it something like I can see how if he has ouchy mouth and like he bumps the side of the metal, it makes, or even it with not ouchy mouth, if he's just like pain in general increases sound sensitivities. So is it that the sound of the bowl is like making his joints hurt more or something like that, right? It would be really cool to A B test a ceramic and a metal bowl and see how he responds.
Yeah, yeah. And I had also thought like he has to, it was his right hind foot that he had hurt and he has to lean more on that with like just the layout of, so it's like, is it just that like you can't lean on the foot enough to like all the things, right? Like there's so many options there. But and then of course like continue like options that we already know work. Tug for core and hind end strength, cavalettis and proprioception work and all of that good sort of stuff. So we have so many options available for this kid. Narrowing down, and you heard Emily do some of this already, where it's like we could have a ramp onto the couch, except not with the layout of my house. When I have told people like that we have to hook him up to his help him up harness, or not hook him up. When we have to put his help him up harness on in order to help him down the stairs, the very first question every single person asks me is, why don't you get a ramp? And I'm like, let me show you my house. Let me show you why I can't do a ramp here. Because, yes, 100% I would want a ramp. It is not feasible with the layout of my house.
Again, this is why a descriptive approach is so important, because trying to force a client with Allie's house to do ramp training just because like that's what you learned to do in the situation would make the client's life unlivable in their own house. I mean, Allie is a behavior professional and she would not find that acceptable to like have to navigate over a ramp every time she wants to walk into her living room. Expecting another client to do that is wild.
Yeah, like, and if we like in order, like the slope of the ramp that we would need in order to like use it for outside, have it be tenable for outside, would mean that it's longer than the inside space. It would have to be both inside and outside of our home, which means that it has to be removed, put like removed and like put into place every single time, and it would be unsafe with how wide it would have to be for Oso to be comfortable and us being able to like put it in and out of place. Like it's not tenable. So, yeah, so ramps are out. That's why I didn't even include them in my options because many people have asked me this. One of the other things you heard Emily do is like she gave me a bunch of different options and then was like, "Oh, but this one option would actually probably solve multiple things." So like we could take out all of those options where we found that like being able to do like a lateral lay or something like that as an opt-in behavior, which we had started working on a million moons ago, and for valid reasons we switched the behavior, but probably worth coming back to now. So the other thing I'm going to do to narrow down my options is look at my own bandwidth and abilities. So, because that was a whole lot of stuff that was on our list, and even though this is actually my full-time job, he is not my full-time job. I have to like actually run Pet Harmony. So, I know, wild. So while like yes, I think Cavaletti's every single day would actually be beneficial for him, there is no way that I am able to do that. I'm going to shoot for 3 times a week for that. Tug would probably also be helpful, and again, multiple times per week. I'm going to shoot for once a week. So yeah, that's some other things that I am narrowing down of like I know what best practices are and nah, I can't do that.
Our goal here at Pet Harmony is good enough practices.
Good enough practices. Practices that will make a meaningful difference. So then going down to prioritize activities. I'm going to prioritize teaching that weight behavior. One of the reasons is it causes me a lot of stress when he makes that poor life choice. He also does it, I forgot to mention this. He also makes that poor life choice for adventure walks when he's getting out of the car. I have to like body block him so that he doesn't just like jump out of the car onto asphalt. Like, and then, like fall down and the whole thing. So it causes me stress in addition to being dangerous for him. So step one, reteach the weight that he used to have back when we needed it. We need it again. My second is my second priority is going to be the exercises that I already know maintain mobility. Like I already know cavalettis, tug, the proprioception work. I already know that that's a thing. I forgot to put all of the pain reduction options into the options, but I'm just going to lump those pain reduction options, his CC loop, etc., into priority is like do the things that you know work. And then I think my third priority is going to be the teaching him a singular way to ask for help because we have beautiful communication and also it's a lot of mental labor on my part. So like and what I mean by that is like he is much better at going up the stairs than he is going down the stairs. He can usually go up the stairs by himself. And by stair we're talking about 3 stairs, people. Like it's not wild and crazy up in here. It's 3 stairs. But he can usually do that by himself. But we do have like a conversation that happens is if I see him hesitate at those stairs longer than what his normal is, then I say, "Do you want help?" And he either goes up himself and he's like, "No, I don't." Or he continues waiting at the bottom of the stairs until I like, and of course his harness isn't on at this point. And so, I have to like do the extra bad body mechanic version. Scoop up hold up the hind end and walk, like waddle walk with him up the stairs. I'm so sorry, Beth, if you are listening to this. To be fair, we practiced in physical therapy, like how to help Oso, because that was one of like my physical therapy goals was being able to help him. So, but yeah. Yeah, so it's the thing. So, like, we do have a way of him saying, I need help, me confirming he needs help, him opting in and out. But that's a lot of labor, like, to have that conversation and, like, to have it for the couch, to have it for, like, for all of the different things that he needs help with. It would be really nice if he had one very clear way that isn't like a long hesitation that like that's a an ask to be watching for. Develop plan of action. I'm just gonna do the first one for time's sake. And I am going to do the me way of training, which means I'm going to teach this while we live our daily lives. I'm not going to set up extra training sessions for this and just, actually treat him for waiting.
Train as you go training, right? Just every time you're in that situation, just have treats ready to go. Put them in front of his face. You don't have to have training sessions. You already have to be at the door with him. You might as well just bring some food with you. This is how I train. Almost everything that I do is this because oh my god, trying to get me to do consistent training sessions is hilarious.
Yeah, so like that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to teach Alex how to do it. So it has the same cue for both of us. I'm also going to have a conversation with Alex about his release cues, not Alex's release cues, Oso's release.
I knew that you weren't talking about releasing your husband.
Right, yeah, he can do whatever he wants. But Oso has had the release cue free for one of the interesting things is that is not what we use at the back door. It is a very specific, okay, go. And who knows why, because consistency is hard. And so talking to Alex about like that, and Oso does respond to, okay, go. And so it's like, cool, let's just make sure we have both release cues because at least that's what I'm using. I have no idea what Alex is using. I don't know if Alex is really using anything. Like, so definitely some consistency needs to happen in that plan of action between the two of us and some conversations there. Implement and document. I'm gonna do the kind of lazy document of like how number of days since we made poor life choices on the stairs.
I hope that you get a sign that's like it has been 0 days since Oso made life choices. Getting the sign might be more labor than just having it like a notebook or something, but in my head, I'm going to pretend that you have that sign because it's funny to me.
What it would probably look like is a post-it note that I tape in the stairwell with like a pen right there, and I just do like a the lines, you know. Yeah, yeah, like the tally marks. Because yeah, getting the sign is cute and also will keep me from doing it. And yeah, so that's how I'm going to document.
Well, like, and then the next step is just life. Step 10 is you adapt when the environment changes and the needs change. End of story. So that was a really beautiful picture of what it looks like to go through the enrichment framework. And I think it's also helpful to talk about what it does for behavior professionals because I recently worked with a mentee on one of their cases, and we were talking about the enrichment framework and how it can help them. And what was adorable and also really like fulfilling, like, oh, this changes we made to the enrichment framework are actually helping, is they kind of had an aha moment when they were looking at their options and we were talking about like the desirable and undesirable behaviors and how those influence the journey towards reaching their goals. And they were like, I don't understand why we wouldn't just use XYZ protocol. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a really great question. So what are your goals? What are the unmet needs for that goals? What behaviors are already happening that would impact your goals? And then what does that protocol do for you? Does what that protocol achieve? Is that grammar? Does what that protocol achieve? I don't know if that's grammar, but y'all know what I mean, right? I used enough words for you to extract meaning from that, right? But it basically, is the protocol actually going to get you towards your goals? And she thought for a minute and like I just saw her eyes get big and she goes, no, like it's not. And then we talked about how the protocol, like the contexts in which that protocol could be helpful would reach their goals, or how we could tweak the protocol as it's traditionally taught to make it better fit the scenario. But in the process of talking through all that, we realized that there were easier, simpler ways to get where she wanted to go with her enrichment plan for this dog. And it was so cute because after we had that moment, we talked through it, we talked through the 10 steps. And we also, I think, like one of the important things about that experience was that she got to practice using the steps of the enrichment framework out of order, like in the order that made sense, right? So jumping back and forth between steps, working on one step, realizing that we had more work to do at a previous step, coming back, circling back to the existing step. So it gave us the opportunity to practice not just the new steps, but also the fact that this isn't a linear process, that you do naturally sort of like move around in all of the steps. You don't have to do it in this rigid order, right? And it was so cute because like when we got to the end and she kind of figured out what we needed to do and why we needed to do it and how it was going to help us and how much more efficient it was than the protocol that she had kind of learned to do prescriptively. She goes, this program is like making my brain spark. Like I'm seeing how all the pieces fit together and like it's making sense. I feel like everything is like coming together. I don't remember the exact words she used, but that's a paraphrase of what she said. And I just felt my heart flutter. Like I was like, "Yay, we did it!" Like the 10 steps are like helping people. Like it was just a more effective way to teach somebody how to use the framework to go through her own thought process and go on that own journey and come up with her own solutions that I didn't give her by teaching her just how to move within this framework. And it just gave me so much joy to watch her go through that process. And then at the end of it, for her to articulate that of like, it's all coming together now. I get it now. I was just like, thank you. This is amazing. It's so beautiful. Oh my God. I'm just like feeling all the warm fuzzies, right?
So I'm curious, what was the primary like issue that the case was about, and like what how did the goals differ from like what the protocol would have achieved?
Yeah, we were talking about predatory behaviors. And the specific type of predatory behavior we were working on is chasing squirrels and then just not being able to get the dog away from the squirrel. And the kind of prescription that she had learned was you just teach a leave it. And so it was like, well, first of all, what do you mean by leave it? Like, what does that look like? Because calling a protocol leave it doesn't necessarily mean we all would do the same things and take the same steps in teaching that. But also, like, what is the point of leave it in this context? What are our goals? What are the desirable and undesirable behaviors? What are the unmet needs? What's the most efficient way to support this dog so that they can be the doggiest dog and do the things like they've got this predatory modal action pattern locked and loaded. Like nobody's teaching them to want to do this, but that doesn't mean that just because it's an innate behavior, it's not adaptable, right? Like, we can't learn and we can't change how these dogs respond to the animals that they are being predatory towards, right? And so it was just a really lovely conversation about what it would look like to make a behavior change plan for this squirrel chasing kiddo that didn't involve a prescription. That wasn't just you teach a leave it, right? It was how do we support this dog in being physically, behaviorally, emotionally healthy and having a healthy expression of their predatory modal action pattern while also teaching them skills to better navigate the environment and how to complete their stress response cycle since they obviously can't complete their modal action pattern. How do we do this in a way that's enriching? And it did not in fact look like a leave it as we defined leave it, right? So it was just a really fun opportunity to see how the changes that we've made to the enrichment framework and teaching people how to move through those steps fluidly, not linearly, really helped everything kind of click into place. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the point, is that the framework isn't just a better tool for animals. It's a better tool for thinking about any system of needs, including human ones. We've said multiple times on the podcast that we love the Healthy Mind Platter because it's essentially an enrichment plan for humans, right? So like giving people this framework to operate in helps them to do this thought work in multiple areas of their life, not just with creating an enrichment plan for pets. And I think another thing that, or let me just say that I think another reason that it's helpful is because I think a lot of behavior professionals at this point have heard that enrichment isn't about doing more. It's about understanding what the system actually needs. But knowing that as a concept and being able to apply that in real life are two very different things. And it seems like our industry, or at least the corner of our industry that we operate in, is at the stage where most people understand the concept and they're still struggling with the application of like, how do I actually do that and not just believe it, but put it into practice? And and the reason that requires practice, guidance, or some kind of feedback is because it looks different every time. That's the whole point of a framework, is that it allows you to respond to the unique situation in front of you instead of just trying to apply a formula to a lot of different types of situations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting, and you mentioned the like one of the frameworks for stages of learning, like conscious and conscious competence, like et cetera, et cetera. And it's so interesting watching people, like when they come, watching professionals when they come into PetPro, having the like cognitive, they agree with a descriptive instead of a prescriptive approach. They want to use an enrichment framework to look through their cases and all of that. And then when we see their work, it's like a disjointed.
So if we're going to go back to that like educational psychology like framework of skill building, the first stage is unconscious incompetence. In other words, you don't know what you don't know, you don't value it. Like this is where the Dunning-Kruger effect goes hard, is like you think that you can do it because it looks simple and not very important to you. And then the second stage is conscious incompetence, where you're like, oh, I understand this now, I understand the value, I'm starting to understand what I don't know, I want to learn this, I value it, I just don't know, I don't have those skills yet. And then the third phase is conscious competence, where you have to like remember the steps and practice the steps. And then the fourth phase, which is fluency, is unconscious competence, where you don't have to think about it, you just do it, right? So we get people in, like when people are joining PetPro, they're usually in that second phase of conscious incompetence, where they value it, they want to learn it, they understand the concept, but they don't know how to do it yet. And then we get to watch them move through phases 2, 3, and 4, and that's the delightful journey that I never get sick of, right?
And I'm pretty sure at the time that this podcast episode is coming out, doors will be opening for PetPro soonish. So, professionals, if you're like, yes, I want to get to the point where I just like do this, I don't have to think through the steps, all of that sort of stuff. Like I said, we are already teaching all 10 steps in PetPro and have been for quite a while. So that full updated framework and all the implementation materials, worksheets, guides, whole thing is already in there.
All right. But in the meantime, how can you apply this now? Start asking the why behind each enrichment choice, not just the what. Why are we doing this? Why do we think that this activity is going to help us reach the goal that we have decided ahead of time that we're trying to accomplish?
The really cool thing about the enrichment framework is we have realized over the still an attack, 7 years that we've been teaching this, that it applies to a lot more than just the animals in our lives. So next week, y'all, we have 4 people on our team who took this framework, the enrichment framework, and did something that we hadn't originally created it for, and that was they applied it to themselves. Because again, the beauty in a framework is that it's flexible. So that's next week to see how you can apply it to yourself, a human being, meet your own needs. So, quick recap. The Pet Harmony Enrichment Framework has been updated because good frameworks grow as we continue to learn. The core is the same, meet the animal's actual needs, but the tools for doing that just got sharper and more refined. So ask yourself, where in your enrichment practice are you working from a checklist instead of a genuine assessment? What would it look like to get curious about that? And like I said, next week, 4 of our PetPro mentors are going to tell you something that might reframe everything we've talked about this month. You don't want to miss it. PetPro doors open September 14th. Like I said, members get first access to the full updated framework and all the implementation materials. Link to learn more about our mentorship program is in the show notes.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if there's someone in your life who also needs to hear this, be sure to text it to them right now. If you're a pet parent looking for more tips on enrichment, behavior modification, and finding harmony with your pet, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Pet Harmony Training. If you're a behavior training professional dedicated to enrichment for yourself, your clients, and their pets, Check us out on TikTok and Instagram at Pet Harmony Pro. As always, links to everything we discussed in this episode are in the show notes. Thank you to Ellen Yoakum for editing this episode and making us sound good. Our intro music is from Penguin Music on Pixabay. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps more pet lovers and professionals find us so they can bring enrichment into their world too. Thank you for listening, and here's to Harmony.